And just like that, it's the beginning of another week. Who the hell would have thought? Unbelievable. I'm Russ Kane. This is The Daily Show on Men's Radio Station. What a weekend. It was a nice party on Saturday night. I don't really do parties, but the hostess was kind of insistent, so I went along. It was actually very, very nice. But I've become quite reclusive, and I really don't do parties at all, because I always want to leave after 20 minutes. But this was fun. This was nice. There was a lot of love in the room. And when they do the videos and sorry I can't be here, but sending a love. When it's Matt Goss, and then on comes Engelbert Humperdinck, who sings "Happy Birthday" to the hostess, you think, I'm in the right place, baby. I'm in the right place. Okay, let's kick off another busy week. So much to talk about. So much I want to get into. But first. You know him, ladies and gentlemen. You love him. I pay for a green screen. He doesn't put it up. He's obviously trousered the money and sold it on eBay. It's Neil Long.
Yes, that's exactly what I did. Yes, absolutely.
So. Well, look, basically, you sent Ken out and said, go to the market.
I'm a petty green screen criminal. You're right. No, we did try and set it up, but we've had a glitch. It'll be ready for Wednesday, I promise.
Glitch. Yeah, they need a bit of work, man. They need a little bit of work. You got to try them out. You got to see how you feel with them.
Apparently, according to Mr. E, my producer, it was all worked out beautifully.
It worked. Did he? He sent me a test. He sent me a test.
Yeah. You've seen it. You've seen the demonstration. So I'm not quite sure exactly what's happened, but it must be a good reason for it not to work if Ken's done it.
Did you just look at it? I think you looked at it. That was the problem. You looked at it and it ran away.
Charming. You go to some great parties, man. Seriously. Where was my invite?
Do you know her? Do you know her?
Do if you'd.
I went on my own. You could have been my. I went on my own. You could have been my +1. I go freaking everywhere. Right, let's go and say hello to some of our gang. Barry J. Allen. I hope you're feeling a little bit better. So that's the flash for you. Let's dash across to Manhattan and New York City. -2.
Oh my goodness me!
Christ, that'll
pouring down rain here in London, Elizabeth. For what
that'll
it's worth.
Freeze the Democrats off the streets. No, it won't. Julie Voice, we go to Houston in Texas. Good morning, chaps. Hope you both take it a bow.
Julie, I accepted your Facebook friend request. Hello there.
And from Houston in Texas, we go to the south of Spain where Chrissy Richards lives. This is like two-way freaking family favorites. Hello, boys. Cold here, but it's not bloody warm here either, sweetheart. Chrissy, hope you're doing okay. And then we go to, and I don't know where she lives, I'm going to say Park Lane, Mayfair in a penthouse.
Melanie Hutchins, well, it's lovely
Melanie Hutchins. Hello. All right. Shall we bring on the first guest of the week, Neil?
At some point, by the way, Russ, just very quickly, that doesn't have to be right now, but on the show at some point today, I've got a major share because it's a really important mental health insight. And I saw it play out in front of me over the weekend. And I thought, I've got to bring that to air. So at some point, we've got to do that if that's all right.
This is obviously Paul Claridge is back on drugs, and that's why we like him. And it says this. How do we know if Neil isn't actually using green screen?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing, Paul.
He's just projecting an image of his home.
It's the homely background on the green screen.
Yeah, it's good with the sort of plant that looks like it's going, help. I always think that.
There's nothing wrong with that plant. It's just a wiggly plant.
The plant, it's not good. Let's get a man of intelligence.
Man.
Let's get an international man of renown on the show and raise the level for the love of God. It's only Simon Hinton.
Oh my God!
Good morning, or should I say good afternoon?
Good afternoon, Simon. How you doing?
Bloody worthy. I'm worthy. You're worthy.
Fantastic, happy, gorgeous, wonderful, magnificent, and feeling filled with the joys of. Well, it's still autumn, isn't it?
Of November.
Simon,
so many adjectives.
Simon, it's winter. It's pissing down outside, and I'm cold. So I want a pint of whatever you're on intravenously, and I want it now.
Okay.
Please. And from all the international people, God almighty, you had to sneak in. Greetings from Istanbul. Okay. Hi, Sam. So that's it. Pretty international gang today. Simon, tell us all about yourself. Your CV is like utterly crazy. If it would take me 20 minutes to read it, it's like the only thing you haven't done was be first man on the moon. Fabulous. Fabulous. Tell us all about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show, Russ.
Pleasure.
And it's nice to be here. I'm not generally a morning person, so I'm happy that it's in the afternoon. I do a lot of things. I'm an entrepreneur historically. I've done a lot of things, journalism, been in the music business, been a property developer.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
All stuff like that.
My deepest commiserations, Simon.
Well, you know what it's like.
I do know what it's like. Destroyed me.
But what I've been doing the last 20 years, particularly as I work as a healer and I work with sort of things that I've researched. I'm a researcher, really, esoteric researcher. And I've just basically had a lot of unusual things happen in my life. And the long and short of it is I've found ways to help people maintain great health, mind, body, spirit, emotion. And I kind of have clients all over the world, and I do my best to help them be the better version of themselves, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it might be, financial, whatever. I just do my best to help them. And I've got a clinic in London, teach Reiki, teach lots of things, and do retreats all around the world, sharing the teachings of goodness, happiness, and great health.
I mean, I've just Googled you. Self-development master, quantum, not just a law of attraction, a quantum.
He is quantum leap. He is the quantum leap man.
I don't know. There's more. Transformational retreats, Reiki master trainer, psychic intuitive. Yeah. And I was so impressed. Then it said 50 years of Guna, mate. Really?
Whoa.
That's
Sorry. Just let me stop you there. You're a Guna.
I have to say, I absolutely am.
And
good. We got rid of him. Tell me more, Simon. Tell me more. I mean, I've read about all this stuff for years, and I must admit, I found it. I suppose maybe I didn't have a very scientific approach. I was sort of just scattershot reading all about it, but you've managed to, excuse me, kind of streamline it and find ways to obviously apply it to yourself and to share with other people as well. So tell us more about that, because this maintenance of mental health and emotional health and all the health, it's so important. So just tell us more, please.
Well, we live in unprecedented times, Luke. People are stressed, and there's levels of pressure that historically we haven't really had. I mean, obviously there have been terrible times in history, but we have such a huge amount of things to deal with now, and so many diversions. I mean, I think apparently they reckon that everything that was in somebody's life could be kept in one copy of the New York Times, 200 years ago. Now it's like a million copies. I mean, the amount of information and stuff that's going on is unprecedented.
And the speed of it,
and the velocity of it.
The majority of it, absolute garbage.
There's a huge amount of garbage, but there is, it's not all garbage. There's interesting things out there. There's so much information. What I do is help people do their best to navigate, to find solutions, because I'm very pragmatic. I'm very practical. From the perspective of I want to find solutions. I'm an Aries. I want to find solutions quickly for people.
Please don't tell me you're into astrology as well, because this is I'm really going to just let Neil handle this if you're going to do astrology.
Well, I'm into frequency, all right? And all it is
we don't want to hear about your love life, Simon. You're here to talk about mental health.
No, this is serious. It's all about vibrational resonance, isn't it?
Holy God.
And if my understanding of topics, New Age, if that's the right term, are right, it's all about us matching our frequency with the higher frequencies, no matter what's going on outside. It's keeping our vibration high, or our happiness levels high, or our health high, depending on what you want to call it.
Okay, you lost me. At the moment I hear frequency, I hear 95.8. And Neil and I know what that is. It's emblazoned on our hearts.
Well,
I have no idea.
I'll tell you what, for fun, let me explain it as I understand it, and you tell me if I'm right, Simon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Everything in the universe has been proven by science to be resonating at a particular frequency.
Mm-hmm.
You break everything down to its tiniest components. Everything has a resonance, a vibe, if you like, a frequency. A lot of what goes on planet Earth, this crazy planet in the universe, is quite, to put it generously, low frequency. Yeah. However, to live our best lives, we need to be at a high frequency, which is closer to our source energy, if you like, whatever you want to call that. And if we can keep our vibe up, our high frequency, regardless of what's going on outside of us, not only will we live a much better and healthier life, we will attract better things to us. And then from that point of view, it doesn't really matter what's going on in the world, because you're kind of creating your world with your vibe. Is that close?
Well, I have to say, I think I should leave now, because I think you said it all.
Thank you.
Well,
you've kind of that.
I mean,
didn't follow any of that, Neil, at all.
Okay, let's try and keep it really
simple. Now, I will be clear. I can talk a good game, but to actually do it, to apply it, I find it bloody difficult. So I'm really glad we're talking.
Not getting it.
Look,
nothing is more important than feeling good.
Let me create some metaphors to make it a bit easier. When you go to Camden Town on a Saturday afternoon, exactly. And you go and
Oh,
you see the
Jesus.
people on the Tennant's Extra Strong and stuff, and
Yeah,
they're off
it's really,
their heads.
it's really nice.
I mean, we could call that a lower frequency because these people are disconnected, they're alcoholics, they're whatever. Okay.
and
If you see someone who's filled with happiness, joy, great health, I mean, you can see there is a difference. Now, if you
Like
watch
you.
well, hopefully.
Oh, come on. It's virtually radiating out the screen, man.
Thank you. What I share with people and show people, there's things that we can do to improve. A lot of people get stuck. A lot of people get stuck with their diet. They get stuck with their lifestyle, and they get stuck with their thinking. They get into depression. My job is to show them there is a way out of this, guys. There's things we can all do practically to make things better for ourselves quicker. And as a result, we're going to be more creative. We're going to have more energy. We're going to be healthier. We're not going to get sick anymore. We're going to have happier relationships, etc. So,
right.
in,
So Simon,
in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Simon, I'm a
Yeah.
meat and potatoes guy, and the
Okay.
audience all over the world come to this show because they're meat and potato guys as well. All right.
Mhm.
Let's have some practical, hands-on, the nitty-gritty, the mechanics of what you're talking about, not the theory.
Mhm.
Okay, the mechanics.
Okay, well, there's quite as you read my resume, I do a lot of things. So there's a lot of stuff. So I want to keep it simple and practical for your listeners and viewers. Okay, so on a nutritional level, I'll give you an example. I mean, I eat meat. I'm a foodie. I was a restaurant critic once. I love restaurants. I've been eating at the best restaurants all over the world. I absolutely love great food. Okay.
Yeah.
I love to have a drink at the football. People know me. I'm a bit of a party animal, so I'm not exactly whiter than white. So what I know though is that if you're going to do those fun things, it's important especially as one gets older, to address and create a balance. So for example, this morning, and I do this every morning, Russ, I create myself a special smoothie that I've put together, the superfoods, I have that. I don't generally eat solid foods till about 5 o'clock. As a result, I'm nice and slim. I'm filled with great energy. And, I'll have a lovely, lovely dinner tonight somewhere, or go out somewhere or whatever. But the thing is, my body has got all the nutrients it needs. It's got a high level of them. I've packed it full, and I've changed my relationship with some of my environment. In this case,
totally
food.
with you. Totally with you on
You with
this.
me on that one?
Reasons why.
Is that simple?
Two reasons why. And I like to back up what you're saying and endorse it. I've started intermittent fasting, which has been terrific.
Great.
And I've also gone more or less on the carnivore diet, pretty much on the carnivore diet now. And I feel a hell of a lot better. Hell of a lot better.
I think when your own experience bears it out, it's very reassuring that there are simple, practical things we can do. And although I did that definition in kind of terms that I've read in books and stuff like that, I wouldn't like to give the impression that it's complicated, the things that we're talking about. Yeah, you go into the mechanics of it, anything's going to be complicated. It's like trying to explain an engine, but you don't need to know how an engine works to drive a car.
Correct.
No, you don't.
That is very strange you should say that, Luke, because that's a sort of similar to
Neil. It's Neil, by the way.
Sorry, Neil. My apologies.
That's all right.
Although I prefer Luke.
Sorry, Neil. Sorry, my apologies.
No offense, Luke. I've been called a lot worse over the years.
My apologies, Neil.
How about this one, Simon? Look, how about this one?
Okay.
Which I totally agree with. Mechanics simplify. Keep away from people who exude negative energies. I call them mood hoovers or energy vampires myself. Do what makes you happy. Totally. Don't feel obliged to be a people pleaser. 100%. It's the world's biggest waste.
I would change that very slightly. I would say don't be a people pleaser.
Yeah, don't
be a people pleaser. Thank you. That's a very nice words from that lovely lady. Don't be a people pleaser. And learn how to manage your energy. So in practical terms, I am one of those guys that does know what goes on under the bonnet. So, I mean, I've had my own harmonic resonant heating system. It's quite complex on some level. So I genuinely do understand the complexity of it, but I take that, and my job is to translate the complexity into that which we can understand. Just like Steve Jobs did with code, he made a graphic user interface where we could understand the complex code in ways that our brain can absorb and practically be
perfect analogy.
Practically applicable. Okay, love thyself. Love thyself is very important, or love oneself. Yes, that's very, very important. What I teach, because love is a very high frequency. When we are kind, caring, compassionate, outgoing person, that's a nice frequency. When you think of somebody like historically, a historical personage like, say, Nelson Mandela, we don't think generally of what house he lived in or what his family was like. We think of the iconic radiance of his amazing life and what he actually achieved, not what he owned and stuff like that. So that's what I would call a high frequency. Somebody who had that faith and belief and knowing, and then put it out there and lived that authentically. So I teach people.
You can see it. It literally exudes out of people.
Yeah, it does.
It really, really does. You can see it within people. When you see it within people, it opens up the possibility to see it within yourself as well.
Absolutely. So in practical levels, I teach people how to be the master of their own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And by being the master, we can step outside of attachments, which Buddha taught are the key to non-mastery. If you want to be a master, you have to be non-attached. So operating in a way where you transcend the issues and the attachments.
Let me ask a question for Christ's sake.
You.
Simon, stop. Let me ask a question, because if I'm asking a question, it means that the viewers and listeners want to ask a question, right? When you're talking about attachments, do you mean emotional attachments, or I've got 27 Rolexes in a safe? Which one is it? All of it. So no emotional attachments.
Okay.
How does that work?
I'll qualify that. I've got 3 beautiful children, right? I love them to bits, and so on one level, of course, I'm attached to them. But what I learn is not to give my power away. A lot of people give their power away to something that they love and become codependent with it. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. So of course, I love my children. I'm attached to them on that level. But what I don't want to do is be one of those people that gives their power away to their external circumstances, whether it's a person, a place, an outcome, or a thing. Giving your power away. Well, a lot of people, like when somebody gets triggered, if someone gets triggered by a situation, it simply means that something within their field has been catalyzed by an external thing that's unpalatable for them. So they get triggered. It means they're not really fully in their mastery. When we overcome that particular piece of neurosis that might have triggered us, then we go, okay, you've said some shit about me. It's water off a duck's back. So I teach people to be like a duck, and the water flows off you. It doesn't make you a sociopath or a narcissist. It means you operate in a different way with your environment so that you can maintain personal power and equilibrium in all your dealings. And that means you'll make better decisions. Basically.
Which essentially is what the Buddha taught, didn't he?
Correct.
If you're a parent and you're a good parent, you love your children unconditionally.
Correct.
I'm not going to come to my relationship with my 4 kids with all these subclauses and contractual issues, which, little tiny subtext.
Actually, Russ, I don't get it. With respect, all the respect in the world, I have to disagree. I don't think that's what he means. Love, the energy of love. If you love someone, it's not a clingy, grabby, possessive energy. That's the opposite. That's fear.
I get that.
Right.
It's
a very light energy, and it allows people. How would I define love? The 4 A's: acceptance, allowance, approval, and appreciation. Okay. Now, if someone is open to receive that energy, if my daughter, who I cherish, is open to receive acceptance, allowance, approval, and appreciation, what more could anyone need? That is love. What Simon is saying is when people they fear losing something, and all these dysfunctional behaviors, we see it around us all the time. Possessiveness, coercive control, to try and control that person, to maintain something, to maintain a hole within yourself. That isn't love.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about unconditional love, which one has. Well, I have for my dog.
Well, love by its nature is unconditional. By its very nature, it's unconditional.
Well, can I just say the Greeks had 4 different words for different types of love, and the highest was agape, which is actually unconditional. There's a love of a friend, a love of food, but the highest is unconditional. So a lot of people come to me in response to what you said, Russ. A lot of people come to me with relationship issues. So it can be, and sometimes it's my boyfriend doesn't love me anymore, or I'm having problems with my children, they're not talking to me. So what I try and do my best to do is often there's something within their own field of the way they're operating that could do with some amending. So my job is to just suggest and share with them some principles where they may be able to amend the way they operate to get the results that they really want, which are the higher results, so that they do have a happy relationship. So there is open communication. So they are living a life where they're sorting themselves out, and to be conscious about that, because a lot of us, let's be honest, Ross, all of us, different, me included, have built up, patterns over the years. Some of them are not exactly good habits with perhaps the way we operate. And I just want to be the best version of myself. So I've done research.
Sure, of course you do.
That's all it is, really. It's not loads of of course I can, we can make a list and we can be linguistic about it, but actually it's practical. It's like, be authentic, be true to yourself, be a good person, be kind, and learn not to get triggered, because what people say about you has got nothing actually to do with you. It's their own stuff. Some people love me, some people don't like me. It's what it is.
But it says more about them, Simon, than it does about you.
Absolutely.
The best advice I ever received, and Cyril Campbell says, not being codependent on any relationship, especially if they're toxic, damn right. Bringing positive energy into your life, not negative. Very, very important. But the most important advice I ever got were two pieces. Let's see how this bounces off you, Simon. My dad, not a religious person any more than I am, said, just be a good person. That's enough. That's the key. Just be a good person. So that's fair enough. And the others, and it was like this. If you're a people pleaser and you want everybody to like you, the question is this. You get onto the Northern Line at 8:30 in the morning. Do you want everybody in the carriage to like you? No, of course you don't. You don't care. Precisely. That's the carriage on the Northern Line at 8:30 in the morning, little microcosm of life. Doesn't matter.
It's people pleasing is absolutely deadly, because in my opinion, see if you agree with this, Simon, or tell me if I'm right, because you obviously know more about this than I do. We had her on the show, actually, a lady called Helen Snape, who's a reformed people pleaser. Do you remember her? And she's now got she got out of an abusive relationship. Now she's got an amazing body of work helping people to stop this toxic to self, I suppose, behavior, because it's very innocent. We all want to be liked and we all want to be accepted. And back in the day, if we weren't liked or accepted, if we were thrown out of the tribe, that would mean death. And I think there's a bit of that still in us at some unconscious level. But nowadays, times have changed and it's not that way. It's like our minds haven't quite, part of our mind hasn't quite evolved yet.
Neil, I would say that the tribe is now, if you're dumb enough, social media. And you care if that tribe, who you're never going to meet,
exactly,
you
Russ.
don't know, who are total strangers and whose opinion I can give
toxic,
a monkey's about.
And if you need approval of everyone before you make any decision, there's a great metaphor I heard once. There was someone didn't like that about me, so I cut my arm off. Then someone else didn't like my leg, so I cut that off. Then I cut my nose off. Then I cut my head off. And by the time I was trying to please everyone, there wasn't anything of me left to give away. You can't give from an empty cup. And like Simon says, it's the issue with the other person generally. It's not you.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say on that, I agree with what you're saying, Neil. I mean, there's on one side we have the people pleaser, which what Jordan Peterson calls compassionate narcissism, which I think is a great
Jordan
term.
Peterson is my god.
Yeah, I love
Jordan Peterson is my god. I think
he calls it
freaking genius.
I think he's a genius too. I love his work. And on the other side, we get traditional, tyrannical, controlling, coercive, narcissistic people. So people come to me who are victims of everything. Honestly, I deal with child abuse, sexual abuse, narcissistic abuse. Some people come to me. I mean, we're having a little laugh this morning, but it is serious.
No, we're not really.
People come to me with really serious stuff, right? And I am a sensitive, even though I'm, I put on a tough Aries exterior. I am actually a sensitive.
Well, you're a gooner, so of course you're putting on a tough exterior.
Well, I have had to be a sensitive the last 15 years.
Yes, you have.
I am a
yes,
sensitive.
matey, you have.
So what I try and do is just, people come to me and it is really, sometimes I think, my goodness, I can't believe this person is coming to me this morning, a maverick like me, sharing stuff they've sometimes never shared with anyone in their life. And it's serious stuff, really serious stuff. And I'm like,
for sure.
Okay, default to the certain principles I'm going to share with them, not get too caught emotionally, but default to sharing key principles that I know work. It's worked for other people, looking after physical body health, mental, and the way we operate and deal with emotions, and learning to amend. It's not to change or suppress the emotion, but learning to amend the relationship sometimes we have with the emotion. So does the emotion trigger us into an adrenal response with cortisol and adrenaline powering through the body and making us stressed? Or is there a way we can actually offset that and be calm in difficult times?
Very important.
That's
Paul Claridge says, I've never met Simon. Nor me, but I love what he's saying, and almost instantly I know I could trust him. I've got
me too.
I've got an excellent.
That's
absolutely,
Paul. I've got a fantastic cryptocurrency scheme for you. And Liz Saul Well, I'm never speaking to you again. So you can shut up, Liz. I'm a 5th generation goon.
I can only
Liz,
apologise.
I liked you, Liz. I've met you, Liz.
I like Liz.
You are dead to me. You
I don't.
are dead to me. Shut up, Liz. Not interested.
I like Liz.
You have crossed the Rubicon. You have crossed that Rubicon.
Can you give us? Can you share a couple of top tips? It's sometimes for me, I can keep myself. It's like the little meme that my day started fantastic. I felt great. I felt happy. I loved everyone, and then I got out of bed and some git ruined it. So how can we keep our vibration high or our feelings good when there's negative people around us that do seem, as Russ calls them, hoovers?
Discipline. Discipline is the answer. Being conscious in the way we operate. So I share something with people. I don't want to get too technical because I don't want to freak Russ out.
You're not.
But basically,
it's
about the chakras.
Let me stop you there, because that's slightly patronising.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you can
I'm
back.
I'm
just back your horse up there, fella.
I'm just
back
teasing.
your horse up.
I'm
Don't
just
patronise.
I'm not. I'm just teasing. The chakras.
Teasing's good, but patronising we won't have.
Okay, no.
So here's the thing. The reason I want to break it down, because we are inundated, Simon, with people who say, I can do this and I can do that. And it all looks fantastic. Now, you have a huge history. Your CV is amazing. I'm not lumping you in with that. But what I'm saying is I have, I feel honor bound, and I have an obligation and a duty to the family that we've created on Men's Radio Station to not have any snake oil salesmen on, which is why you are here, right? And to ask the questions that they can't ask, to actually get the fundamental mechanics of it. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So you can be as complex as you like, as long as it's just not gobbledygook, and we can see practically how to incorporate those things into our daily lives.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things going on around us energetically that we can't see with our own senses, but science has identified instruments to show that they do exist. So there's a lot that we don't immediately physically see, but we can feel and sense. What I teach people is to be authentic, whatever that means. What does it mean? It means living your true self. I believe that each person has their own true soul path, their own destiny, their higher destiny. But a lot of us, because of the peer pressure and the programming and the education system, we get caught up in a certain way of thinking, and that way of thinking is invariably limited. So what I teach people is to have a questioning mind. Do your own research. Don't take anything on gospel, even from me. Do not accept anything. I want people to challenge me. I disagree with my kids quite often, and that's healthy. That makes me happy that they don't agree with everything I say. I don't want them to, but we have healthy interchange to work out how can we be the best version of ourselves? What can we do today that's really positive? Well, I'm going to make a beautiful smoothie this morning. I'm going to go out to the shops and I'm going to smile at everybody. Simple things we can do. I'm going to put out a joyful vibration wherever I go. And let me tell you, wherever I go to a restaurant or go out, I always get tables, things come to me, and people often give me free food. I mean, it's not that I'm looking for those things, but when you put out a really happy, nice, good vibration, you're conscious in the way you operate energetically, conscious not to get triggered, conscious to walk the path of mastery, great things happen. Amazing things happen all the time.
Used to say if you put it out there, you'll get it back. You know,
do.
Or
You do.
even more in an old level, you reap what you sow. And
Absolutely.
I totally agree about positive people and negative people. And you have to avoid negative people. And somehow they try and infiltrate themselves into your life. And it's no good. It is utterly a literal waste of your time.
I think that's what the original teachings on karma meant. That you reap what you sow. You put out a good vibe, you get a good vibe back. I think it's been really overcomplicated over the years, but I think in essence that's what Simon's saying and what it always meant. Like attracts like.
Simon, do you think that some people? I went for my Sunday pub lunch yesterday in one of my local pubs, and a family came in. All right, the whole atmosphere in the room changed. And I thought, I'm getting the worst, negative, horrible. I don't know them. I've never met them before. But they emanated this awful vibe, And I thought, I wish they'd go, because it really made it. Do you think some people do that? You see them straight away and they got a horrible vibe about them.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story. One time I had a clinic in response to that. I had a clinic in Charterhouse in Marylebone, and there were 3 people. As an experiment, I did this. There was a guy who had a restaurant. There was a lady who ran a cafe shop, and a guy who worked in a pub. And all 3 of them I noted were quite miserable. So for 3 months, every single day, I consciously sent them good energy, sent them Reiki, sent them healing, smiled at them every day. Oh my God, they all changed. It was unbelievable. And I remember going into this Lebanese restaurant, and Lebanese supermarket, and the guy just said to me down there, "Who are you? Who are you?" He goes, "You're always so happy when you come in. I feel so happy." I was thinking, oh my God, it's so funny, because I was like, been sending him healing every day. Now we can change the world. That family you talked about, Russ, you know, they probably had they're maybe a bit toxic. They've probably got a lot of issues. They've got all sorts of stuff going on. But those people, for me, I want to help people like that shift if they're ready. I want them to shift.
Yeah, I tell you
do
what
a few little things and get a better reality.
I tell you what I found with them, and I didn't know them. All right, I thought there was a low level of violence that could explode any minute. And they were kids. And I thought, if somebody says something, it could just kick off. I mean, you get to a certain stage in life and you read people, and I thought they could just kick off with this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And funny enough, the father came over, because I had my dog with me. He said, "Is your dog friendly?" And of course, he had kids of every age and a little baby running around. And I said, "Well, not very friendly if a baby sticks its finger in its eye," which was my way of saying, control your kid, because I can't guarantee your child's safety. That's not my job. My job is to keep my dog, under control, which she would be. But if there's a random act of violence from a kid who's not being supervised, not my problem. That's your problem.
Yeah, I understand.
That's kind of what I felt.
I understand that. I mean, in practical terms, you saw a family yesterday. Sounded like they were quite toxic. And, let's be honest, I don't judge people, because the world is going through difficult times. They may be having major problems financially. They may be having, who knows what.
They've been on a huge shopping spree, let me tell you.
Well, who knows what was going on? But the thing about it is, what I do is, when people come to me or they book to see me online, I have clients all over the world. They come from America today. I've got all sorts of people, and I just basically give them a kind of a blueprint where I can share with them. We talk through their stuff and give them a blueprint to help them make a shift where they feel they need to. Some people are very happy financially, but they need to make a shift on their health. Some people are very good with health, but they have issues with their relationships. So everyone's got their own stuff. Me too. I've had my own challenges. Believe me.
But if you hadn't, Simon, if you hadn't had your own challenges, my view is you wouldn't be authentic. It's like someone who's, a genius about cooking and can't cook themselves. It's like, really,
what got you on this path in the first place, Simon? When did your pathway begin?
Well, I was in 1987. I went into the Great Pyramid in Egypt when I was only 22. And I had a sort of an activation, and I started to get telepathic. And I was like, it's kind of weird. I went into the middle. You could go in the middle then. And then basically that sort of opened my mind a little bit. And I started studying sort of, things like, Carl Jung, and I started looking at different things. And then I basically got more practical with my work. And then I studied Reiki. That was a big change for me in the 90s. When I did Reiki. And then I started teaching Reiki 22 years ago. So I was teaching people to work with energy. And then during that whole story, I've had a lot of very unusual things happen to me. I don't want to scare Russ. I'm not being patronizing. I just don't want to scare you.
Why would you scare me? Why would you scare me? You don't know anything about me, so you don't really know what I believe and think.
Lots of extraterrestrial activity with UFOs and all things like that.
Why would that scare me?
Well, I'm just being tongue in cheek.
What happened when you were in the pyramid? Let's wind this back, because I'm freaking fascinated by this. You go into the pyramid. You're a happy tourist, minding your own business, and suddenly, what?
Well, it wasn't quite like that. I just was in the middle of the pyramid, and I just started to get what was actually happening. The girlfriend I had at the time, 37 years ago, whenever it was. we started getting telepathic, and I was thinking, this is really odd. I've never experienced this kind of level of, at the time, this level of synchronicity and serendipity between us. And so we went back to the hotel. I'll never forget, it was the Sheraton we were staying at on the Nile. I went back to the hotel and I said, I'm going to put some numbers in your head and let's see if you can do it. And the first 2 numbers I put in were back to front. The third number, I put it in her head and she wrote it down exactly. And she started, I remember, never forget it, she started crying. And, oh my God, I'm really scared. It's okay. It's okay. Obviously something had happened. It was almost like I was being shown, because we are chemical, electric, transmitter receptor systems. We are. You and I are like iPhones. We're all like iPhones or Android phones or whatever smartphones we have. The same principles. We're transmitting and receiving information all the time. Once we learn to get clear and refine that, we become better at it. We become more intuitive. Our judgment of situations improves. Like you were saying, Russ, you're a pretty good judge of character now. You've been around the block. You've seen so many different types of people, and you generally have a kind of nose for what's good and what isn't. And that comes when we are clear. So I help people get clear, remove all those dark programs, those negative programs, those falsehoods that are projected on us from the marketing companies, from the media, and all the other stuff that they chuck out to make us get into fear, which is a low vibration, and move out of that into personal power and love, which is a high vibration.
Simon, let me expand this a little bit, because you've touched on something which is very close to my heart. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was tinfoil MAGA bullshit. I do believe it now, that we are constantly drip-fed fear the whole time. The reason is, and you don't need to be Einstein to work it out, because if you're afraid, you are much more malleable. And if you're much more malleable, all sorts of controls can be brought in to corral your life. How do you, so let's accept that as what's happening. If it, every time if it's not COVID, it's COVID is coming back. If it's not that, we're all going to die by Putin. If it's not going to die by Putin, we're all going to freeze to death. We're not going to freeze to death. There's no food in the shop. It's endlessly to make us feel on edge.
Yeah.
Which I refuse to buy into this.
And most of the time, it turns out to be nowhere near as bad
it's all
as these people would tell us. Example, the petrol crisis, that lasted all of
5.5 minutes.
You know what I mean?
5.5 minutes. Yeah, of course it does. So Simon,
and it all blows over.
Now we've got you here, who is an exemplar in this area. What do you, no, I'm not being rude. I'm being serious. Okay. What do you do on a daily basis when you are, as you say, bombarded by the media into feeling nervous, afraid, and at the very least, uneasy?
Okay. Well, for a start, the first thing I do is I avoid mainstream media. I avoid, so put less rubbish in your head.
Yeah,
and you get same with food. I don't have junk food. I might have fish and chips once in a while, but I don't generally. Don't have junk food. Well, don't have junk food at all.
Correct.
So it's what I put in my. But then there's the people around me. Quality rather than quantity. I know, like yourself, Russ, a huge amount of people, but I choose on my social circles. I want to be with people who have a nice vibration, a high vibration, people that are going to, when people come to the clinic, that's a different thing, because people come with all sorts of problems, and then it's in a professional relationship. So I create certain boundaries, and I'm there to deliver information that they clearly are ready to receive.
Yes.
So just look at what you're putting in your brain.
Can I ask you this?
Simon? The TV, it's your choice. It's
number one.
Choice.
I never watch. Number one, I'm with you on this 100%. I never watch the news because it's not news; it's propaganda. If I want the news, I'll get the headlines. I'll make up my own decision. I'm over 21, right? I don't need someone to interpret it for me. Thanks. But number two, too many people, and I'd like to know what you think. And I think Neil and I are ad idem on this. They got all these people, and I think, do they want something from me? I just want to be with people who are my closest friends, who I enjoy their company. I can be 100% open and honest. I'm quite reclusive now, because I won't go out just because somebody invites me out, because it's like, why do they want to do that?
Interesting.
What is the subtext to this?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, actually, Russ, you've made. And so again, it's about choice. And what a lot of people forget is they have choices, because they get into a rhythm of operating a certain way. I say it's a little bit like a sat nav. Give you a little metaphor. I was out in France a couple of years ago doing one of my retreats, and I actually had two voices going on at the same time, because I actually had the TomTom and Google Maps on at the same time. And it was a brilliant metaphor, because one was going, turn right, no, turn left, turn right. It's like, fucking hell.
That's brilliant.
It's like the monkey brain. Like you could, and like, actually my intuition is, I know where I'm going. I'm going to go there. I'm going to turn this fucking shit off. And listen. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I'm just gonna like listen to my intuition and go where I need to go, and look at the programs and what people are telling you, because at school they tell you to be a certain way. They tell you to do this. I'm what we call an indigo child. So I'm somebody who's a bit of a rebel, or a lot of a rebel. I've never bought into the mainstream media. I've never really listened to what I was told at school. I learned what I needed to learn, but I always tracked my own path ruthlessly and independently through life, which is why I've had an interesting life. It's because I've decided not to follow what I've been told. So I've tried to teach my kids, don't do what you're told, be smart, make choices that are intuitive, take a view with all the different things you do, but don't just take it as you're told, because you'll end up just like another one of those people out there who are just a robot. Don't be a robot. Be creative and do your own thing. That's what I encourage people to do.
There's an old thing. Now, what is the? You're going to give me a lot of technical description of why, but one of the things I think as we get older or get more mature or just go through life, if you don't listen, well, this is a question, Simon, rather than a statement. If you don't listen to what I call your inner voice, or more crudely, your gut feeling, it always goes awry every time. And you always turn around and say, I knew I shouldn't have, because your little voice is telling you, but I don't know what that little voice is, but you have to learn to trust it. Am I right, or am I talking nonsense?
You're talking absolutely brilliantly. That's exactly how it should be. Now, the thing is, with children, you've got a few, I've got a few. With children, when they're young, they're insouciant, that French word, it's carefree. They're just like, and they just go with their own flow. And of course, what happens is that natural intuition is invariably suppressed and subjugated as we get older. So people go into a different kind of thing. And then what happens, they become out of sync with their natural open flow. And the result is disease, sickness, and erroneous decisions. That's my experience. So what we have to do is we have to clear away all that stuff and get people to get back onto it. Now, the thing is, I view it like an aerial. If we're all aerials, it's like cleaning the system, cleaning it so that we can have a much better and more flowing connection to that gut feeling, as you describe it. And that's also part of the work that I do, teaching people to clean up and open up so that they can be much more in the flow in their life.
Oh, that's
and I've experienced
Neil's big thing.
I've experienced flow states. They are ecstasy. And I read that it's the only human state, according to the neuroscientists and the spiritual researchers, because those disciplines have met now. Science and religion will never meet, but science and spirituality are one and the same now, in my humble opinion. And it's the only state that these researchers know of where you get all 7 bliss chemicals at once, with your dopamines and your anandamides and all 7 at once. And it's like being high on your own brain chemistry. It's an amazing experience, flow states. Amazing.
They are amazing. And I teach people how to live in flow, particularly with the moon. I work very much with the Jewish system called the Kabbalah. I've been teaching that for over 20 years.
Oh, you work with Kabbalah?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a very strong connection with the Hebrew letters, and it's very, very, very much integrated into my system. I mean, I work with all different religious systems, by the way.
Simon, while I've got you.
Yeah.
Could you tell Madonna to ease up on the plastic surgery?
Well, that's Kabbalah with a K. I teach Kabbalah with a Q. It's slightly different.
Oh.
The cornerstone of the West, the cornerstone of the Western magical tradition, that it's not just a Jewish thing. Obviously it's a Jewish thing. Respect to the Jewish tradition, but that model can also be utilized in other ways. That's all.
Because if it's universal spirituality, it applies to anybody.
Sure.
And then we can get rid of that. My God's better than your God, which causes all sorts of problems in the world.
Well, for me, there's just one consciousness,
yes,
and
exactly.
it can be deified. It can be deified in many forms, which can be useful because we want to bring in abundance. I call it Lakshmi every morning. You know, the Hindu goddess of abundance, absolute love. I call in that vibration, and things just open up all the time. Or if I want health, it might be Kuan Yin, the lovely Eastern goddess Kuan Yin, or it might be Hecate for the moon, flow. If I want to get into flow, all different.
She's on the chase.
Or the Holy Shekinah. the Jewish Holy
Not
Spirit.
that eggity
It's
about-
all different ways of talking about
What was the
it,
last
right?
one? What was
The
the
Holy
last one?
Shekinah or Shekinah. Some people call it Shekinah, some people
Sounds
call
like a
it Shekinah.
mishegas to me. I
Well,
don't know
it's
what
the
that is.
it's the Jewish name for the feminine God.
Is it?
Yeah,
Feminine God.
the Holy Spirit, the
You live,
feminine
you learn.
aspect. Yeah, the feminine
Blimey.
aspect. Yeah.
So you
No
have a
idea.
practice every morning which gets you aligned for the day. I think we asked at the beginning of this, what do you do? What's the practical thing to do? And you teach people this practice. Once, and I totally understand by cleaning yourself up. I remember Louise Hay, who was like the matriarch of self-help, wasn't she? She was one of the first
Absolutely.
self-help books, You Can Heal Your Life. And she said, when you begin this healing process, and she had a great but simple analogy, and it was a bit like when you've roasted a Sunday dinner and you've got the tray and it's all dirty. To clean the tray, you have to put it in the water. And then while it's getting clean, all the gunk rises to the surface. So I'm going to ask this question. If people are in that process, this very early stage of releasing their gunk, how long does it bloody have to take? Because I know some people that get a bit lost in it.
Well, there's layers. So sometimes people come and have a session with me. Very, very common, actually. They say it's the most transformational 4 hours of their life. I'm not trying to big myself up, but
No, you're not.
No,
it's
you
need to- you
it's
don't need to add a
intense
caveat.
because
No, we
there's
need
lots
to.
more because there's lots more gunk coming out at the beginning. So
Mm.
people feel more when there's resistance. I also wanted to say somebody mentioned about anger on there.
Yeah.
Anger, I'm not all love and light. Okay, I'm pretty hardcore, believe me. Anger is important. Righteous anger, tough love is equally important. So
This was
not
the qu-
about
this-
it's
this
not
was
about
it.
not having anger. It's not about not having anger. Sometimes righteous anger. I mean, you know, if you're a Christian, you'll hear about Christ throwing the tables out of the temple in anger. So you know, it's about being appropriate. It's not about being a people pleaser, just being lovely to everyone. It's about being in mastery, being appropriate, and operating with clarity and conscious awareness.
Let me ask you this.
Consciously.
Let me ask you this, because anger is a huge thing. We're living in a very, very effed up, angry world. Everybody's angry. And the reason we're angry, one of the reasons, and please jump in and say, Russ, you're talking rubbish, is there's no middle ground anymore. We're not allowed to have a middle ground. You and I can disagree on stuff, and we'll say, you know what, we'll agree to disagree, shake hands and go and have a martini or something,
Exactly.
whatever. That's the grown-up way. We live in a world now where I'm right, you're wrong, there's no middle ground, and you're an idiot because you don't agree with it. What's that about? I mean, that's just
I think social media is a lot to blame.
it is about social media.
I think it's
my
not just
question's
about
bigger.
it's
My question's
polarized.
bigger.
It's polarization. Why is it we are polarized? Well, a wise man or woman is going to say, okay, there's different sides to the argument. There's different ways of looking at things.
It's
On my moon,
nuanced. It's
nuanced.
nuanced.
I happen to have my moon in Libra, which makes me quite circumspect, thank God, because I'm an Aries and pretty full on by. But I like to see all sides of the of a situation or debate. I like to look at all because everyone comes from a different place and everyone has a story, and that story needs to be respected.
That's right.
It needs to be respected.
You don't know what's going on in people's lives. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Nobody does anything wrong given their model of the world, perhaps.
Well, I do think there's a higher and lower. I do think there's a higher and lower vibration. Some people are really, really kind of messed up in their thinking because they're so toxified by their programs. But I like to understand where they come from, and on the back of that, Neil, give them tools to help them shift. You know, if some people are fossilized in really backward thinking, it's okay. I accept it. You come from where you come from. Do you want to make changes? Are you living the life you want? No, I'm not. I'm messed up. I've got cancer. I've got arthritis because I've got so much suppressed anger. Okay, let's look at that. Let's take a look at the anger that you're carrying. Let's take a look at the history. Let's find ways. Would you be willing to let go of that? How would you feel if you could move your hands again and they weren't arthritic? Well, I'd love that. Are you willing to do the work? Yeah, I am. Okay, let's look at, and then I'd find a blueprint for them. Try and work out.
If someone's, it comes down to that person's willingness. And if in spiritual circles they talk about ego a lot, don't they? And the one thing about ego, it always wants to be right. And I've seen it play out in people want to be right. Even if it costs them in extreme cases their life, they will stick to that, being that rightness rather than being willing to be wrong, even though on the other side of that there's a much happier and more expansive and joyful experience, because you'll be wrong about something that wasn't serving you, but they cling to it like a limpet sometimes. No.
Yes, that's very true. If there's a big storm, the trees that are going to survive are those that bend. If the trees that
Yes.
can't bear it are going to crack. So if people are I don't think ego is a bad thing, because ego can be a positive thing, but there is a thing called lower ego, where we allow our lower selves, our unresolved neurosis, to dominate our behaviors. That's what I call lower ego.
I agree.
Ego
I mean,
as
having
a
a healthy
drive,
ego, just
being
a
a
healthy
driven-
sense of ourselves as an
Yeah.
individual. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
Nothing wrong with that. And having a drive and commitment, which comes from personalization and ego, is a good thing if that drive and commitment is to something for the betterment of the world.
So let me
I
I
agree.
want to put up a comment, and then I want to ask you the question I was leading up to. I'm sorry about that. Ebony the Mini Schnauzer apologizes to everyone around the world. She runs my life. Okay, this is from Glassy Amanda. Sorry you've disappeared. It's not about righteous anger. It's about anger being a necessary emotion for good physical health. If it's not released, it's dangerous for our physical health. And yes, it needs to be used properly. Depression arises from anger turning inwards. Yes. If people come to me depressed, the first question I ask is why? What are they angry about? So my question about anger is this: what can you do, Simon, to make sure it doesn't eat you up? Because I think if you don't get rid of it, as Amanda Glass is saying, if you let it stew inside of you, it's really poisonous.
Well, I agree with what Amanda Glass is saying. Actually, it's not just about righteous anger. I was just giving one example of anger, Amanda. So my apologies if I didn't communicate effectively. It's important that suppressed emotions come out. It's very important, and that process can be painful. What I do is I help people with trauma. So I have light therapy and different machines I use, like the magnet machine, and it helps to release the cellular memory, because basically trauma is held as a chemical imprint in the cells. It's actually an imprint, and you'll keep carrying that imprint until eventually you release it, which is why some people who've never dealt with their stuff, you see them, old people, they're like this and they're angry, and they're because they're just carrying a yoke of burden for all their life. So yes, Amanda, it's very important to release anger. This isn't all just like lovey-lighty. I think it's one of the best ways to release anger and to be is to work positively, and not just. I don't want people to dwell on their dark side. I want them to accept it, embrace it, and release that which isn't working for them in a good spirit. But in a good spirit.
I can only endorse.
I want to be evolved.
Perfectly
I want to
stated.
evolve. I want to evolve. I want to get better. I want to release this trauma. I want to release this pain. I want to release this anger. Simon, what can you do to help me? Well, let's get on the bed and let's get some machines on you, and let's hear what your story is, and let's flipping get to work.
It's interesting. One of my
Perfectly
mantras.
stated.
One of my mantras, Simon, is that it came from the band Public Image. Actually, there's nothing I thought about. It's anger is an energy, and I think if you can it's wonderful. And if you can harness what I've tried to do, not always successful, obviously, because I'm just like everybody else. We're just punters doing our best. Is to harness that anger, but turn it into a positive energy and throw it into my work, etc. And that works for me.
Well, that's brilliant, because often it's often when people get frustrated, they have a drive and a spirit. If there's not an outlet to express how they feel, then it becomes suppressed and eventually leads to disease. So, it's important that I like people that are open and expressive. So with my children, we're very open, we're very expressive, we communicate very openly. And sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's upset, but it's temporary. It doesn't last forever, because we're expressing it, we're allowing it to be released. Giving people the chance to be heard is very important, which is what I also do. People sometimes sit down, they can't speak to their husband. They feel they can't speak to their husbands, their wives, their sons, their daughters, their friends about it, because they'll be judged. So they come here, they're not going to get judged. I'll listen to them. I'll listen carefully to what their story is. And then I'll revert back to the principles of mastery and saying, this is possibly a different way you could amend certain things to move beyond that. And so they feel, they just being able to be listened to. Honestly,
you've gone to the very heart of why I co-founded Men's Radio Station. When we were setting it up, and I wrote all stuff. My strapline was I wanted to create a non-judgmental space, not a safe space, because that's like California, where they cry if the wind changes direction. Get a life, you jerks. What I'm saying is it's a non-judgmental space. So you come in and you can, whatever it is, and you're not being, you're this and you're, no, not, that's not it at all. And that's really interesting. I guess
And
that's why
and what
therapy
you've said,
works, isn't
I
it?
totally endorse, because that's how I do my best to be for my daughter. Just encourage her to be true to herself and follow her own dreams, and she's done remarkably thus far.
Yeah, she's
And
flying. She's flying. Your
yeah,
girl's
absolutely
flying.
flying.
Isn't she? Yeah.
And to be safe to express herself. She I won't judge her for anything. So that's really good parenting advice that you've given us there as well. Because when I was young, there's certain things I was pretty close to mum and dad, particularly my mum, but there was certain things you couldn't discuss with your parents, and then you can discuss it with your mates, and they advice not be as good. But if you're open to everything and say, hey, there's nothing you can't talk to me about, and that's really cool. I think that's great.
I was at a seminar called Speak Your Mind, done by the excellent Dr. Maria Kempinska ages ago.
She's great,
Maria's a good mate. And and one of the things that happened at the seminar pre-COVID, when we all had lives, before the world went mad.
Well, I didn't do anything different. I just carried on as normal. Kept the clinic open, just ignored all the advice, and lived my life according to my heart.
And
I put it out there.
I can't let that slip by. Did you get ill? Yeah,
I did get COVID eventually, and I did get ill.
And how was it?
It wasn't fun.
No, I mean,
but I never, I'm not vaccinated. I refused to do that, and just relied on my own system and health, and got well, and I'm fine now. And that's
is it your system?
That's another hour's conversation. That's another. That's fascinating.
That's another conversation. Don't want to go
whole,
there.
When you come back,
everyone has their own choice. Everyone has their own choices. I don't say you should or shouldn't do that, but I don't believe that the state is God. That's why I'm not a fascist, because that's the fascist thing, that the state is God and everything is the state. I don't believe that. I believe that we can rise up and claim our own sovereignty. And that's all the work I do is about people taking back control of their own lives, their own health, their own mindset.
And I guess one of the biggest blocks to that is blame, because so many people must say, I am the way because of insert whatever, religion, the government, my partner, the kids, blah, blah, blah. But to take back this identity as a sovereign being, you can't be in blame, can you?
Well, the thing is, it's about taking responsibility. If we're in blame, we're a victim. Victim consciousness perpetuates, whether it's we feel we're a victim of racism, or we feel we're a victim of our social status, or whatever it may be. I grew up in a council house. I went out and made my own life. We had no money. It didn't matter. In fact, it was probably better for me, because I just went out and
define you then.
Didn't define me.
It didn't define you.
Brilliantly said, Russ. Brilliantly said.
I'm not going to get into the whole Harry and Meghan quagmire, because I haven't got the energy, and frankly, I just can't F up my day by even thinking about it. But it can't, my kids, bless them, lost their mother when they were 5 years old. Rough as hell. But it didn't define them as adults. And I think too much, especially the American psychology, is, somebody stole my bicycle when I was 7 and I didn't get a pony for Christmas, and now I'm a mass murderer, but I've got an excuse. No, you haven't. I'm being very simplistic, but there's too much of that. And you and so many of the guests that Neil and I have on, and with Phil on a Friday, they haven't let where they started define them as where they're going. And it's so important.
Which is an act of sovereignty and power in and of itself, isn't it?
But sometimes people, yes, it is, Neil. Sometimes people just need a help, so they're not defined by that.
Yes.
People get into a rhythm of dining out on their past. I'm upset because of this. I've got a chip on my shoulder because we've never had any money.
Oh, I know people like that.
It's a liberation to not to have to be relying on your parents for money. Believe me, it's a liberation.
Then you turn around and you go, I'm not a therapist. I don't have the skill, but that was then. This is now. You can't keep looking over your shoulder. The past isn't going to come back.
But sometimes people need a little help, and you've articulated the process so eloquently, Simon. I think you're brilliant. That is the website that people need to go to find you. Yeah.
Or info@simonhinton.com if they want to send me a completely in confidence email.
I'll pop that up as well.
info@simonhinton.com. Just send me an email, and I'm happy to.
This has been. You see now. A little interesting aside. We were chatting before the show very, very briefly, just to make sure I could hear and you could see me and everything. And you said, how long is it going to be? And I said, well, it's a tabula rasa. It's an open book. Let's see how interesting it is. And you said, I'll be gone in 10 minutes. And I knew within 30 seconds of this show starting, I thought, nah, it's a full hour special. It's a full hour special.
I think I'm going to get in touch with you, Simon, because I like the cut of your jib. So expect an email.
A bit rude. It's a bit rude. We can't see. We can only see from you.
Have we got time for me to do a share quickly? Can we have an extra minute?
You got 30 seconds, boy.
Can't do it in 30 seconds.
Well, that's what you got. Can't do it because otherwise we're clashing.
do it
All the
next
other
time,
fabulous shows on men's radio. So, Simon, big question. Sounds like blankety blank, doesn't it? Will you come back?
More than happy to come back anytime. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you guys. It's been fun.
Come back in January because I don't think, and I don't often say this, and Neil back me up, I don't even think we've touched the sides here, fella. I don't even think we've touched the sides on this. There's so much good and there's so much positive, practical information. And if we've helped somebody today, even one person, hey, that's worth it. Right. Yeah. Neil and I will be back on Wednesday with more fun and frolics. That could have gone horribly wrong. Simon, a pleasure to have met you.
Thank you, guys.
Until then, try and stay out of trouble. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.